Hi, before I start today's video, I'd just like to say that I do apologize for not uploading any content for the past couple of weeks. I was going through some personal stuff that I'm not going to talk about here. And also I participated in an art contest, which took a large chunk of my time, and as you can see here is what I submitted. I don't actually happy with the result. I'm still working on the background, but unfortunately time ran out, and that's the artwork that I submitted for this contest. And then this weekend I'm going to shoot a TV commercial in another city in Cape Town. So I just thought that I'll quickly upload the video that I have recorded before this whole thing. I just never got time to actually go around to edit it. So I do apologize for not being able to uploading new content for a while. And I might be delayed for the next upload as well due to I'm going to be away for at least a week. Yes, and with that said, I hope you do enjoy today's content. And also, right, I'm just like to assure my viewers that, I did go into some kind of drama versus some other people and his fanboys over YouTube because I criticized him on his elbow position. Do put your mind at ease if you are my viewer that I'm not deterred from making a video just because him and his fanboys are upset and attacking me. And I'm far from done with that whole debacle. I will be making more videos to address that issue as soon as I get the time. So I'm not being scared or being demotivated from making video just because of that kind of nonsense, alright? And any of those keyboard warriors that actually see me in real life, they will definitely regret their decisions. With that said, I'd like to also to remind everyone that those people who are his fanboys, they've been actively downvoting my videos. So if you are my viewers and you do enjoy my video and find my information valuable, please remember to upvote it just to offset what they are doing, which does affect my channel in the long run. And thank you so much for supporting my channel, and I hope you enjoyed today's content. Hi everyone, welcome to the TriEssence martial art channel. Another episode of Style Deconstructed, where we break apart specific Chinese martial art styles and look at the deeper meaning of certain style. Now this episode we're going to look at why Yiquan has its elbow sticking out. Now in case you're wondering why we choose this particularly seemingly niche topic, well, it's because of a recent drama I had on my YouTube channel. If you have been following my channel close enough, you should undoubtedly have picked up the recent drama where I criticized a certain Xingyi practitioner for sticking his elbow out. And somehow that became such a big drama, and a lot of his fanboys got upset with me and constantly messaged me with very nasty things all the time. It's like those guys have nothing better to do in their lives. And I've already made a response video in terms of the theoretical reason behind why Xingyi has his elbow parallel to the fist, well, in the same line as the fist rather than sticking it out. So if you haven't checked that, do check those videos out before you watch this video. Now, whenever I talk to somebody about the position of the elbow in Xingyi, which obviously to be in the same line with your fist or hand rather than sticking out, there's all going to be people who are going to try to make an argument referencing other style. Like in this case, someone on Facebook was trying to argue that, well, but Bagua has his elbow sticking out. Well, guess what? Bagua only has the elbow sticking out on horizontal motions and upwards motions. If you look at his most primary hand posturing, you can clearly see the elbow is down. No one holds this position with elbows like that, okay? It's in one line. So no, Bagua doesn't have the elbow sticking out. And furthermore, that argument is so stupid because just because someone does Bagua or another style that has his elbow sticking out, it doesn't mean that they should do Xingyi with elbow sticking out too. If you're doing two styles, and the one style is interfering the fundamental principle of another style, then you probably shouldn't do those two styles together because they're interfering with each other, okay? So there are no excuses why any Xingyi practitioner should have his elbow sticking out. Now another common argument I get, not this time but previously when I was arguing about the Xingyi elbow with somebody else, they brought up the argument that, yeah, but why is it okay to sticking the elbow out in Yiquan? And as a lot of you might already know, Yiquan is a style that came out of Xingyi. Its founder Wang Xiangzhai used to practice Xingyi. He claimed to be a disciple of Guo Yunshen. Of course, that connection is disputed in the Xingyi lineages. We're not going to go into that today. But he definitely came from a Xingyi background and eventually founded Yiquan. So that's what a lot of people think, well, if Yiquan can have his elbow sticking out, then so can Xing Yi. So today we're going to discuss why it's okay for Yiquan to stick out his elbow, but not for Xing Yi. So the first and most obvious thing is that the two styles have a completely different stance. If you look at the primary stance for Xing Yi, it's the 3T stance, which looks something like this. Okay? If you look at the Yiquan stance, it's either 混元桩 or 技击桩. And on both instances, you can see that the elbow is pointing horizontally to the side. So just from this alone, you're able to tell why it's okay for Yiquan to be like this, and Xing Yi is not okay, because obviously the two styles have very different fundamental stances, right? The stance is basically tells you how this particular internal style should be trained. The stance comprises of all the most important fundamental principles of the essay style. So by looking at a certain style stance, you can already tell what kind of principle is allowed and what kind of principle is not allowed. But now you might ask, okay, it's cool that the stance can see difference, but why, right? Aren't we all part of the same universe, we're the same laws of physics, we're the same human body mechanic and limitation? So why does Xing Yi prefer to have his elbow in a straight line, whilst Yiquan having the elbow sticking out, right? I mean, which one is more optimal? Isn't all martial arts supposed to find the most optimal path into combat? And by definition, then naturally they abide by the same laws of physics and therefore should have the same elbow position. So this is what we're going to discuss in detail today, is that why Yiquan want to have elbow sticking out. The first and foremost important thing you need to consider, like I've mentioned in my previous video, is that Xing Yi came from spear. Alright? So the way you do 3T stance is pretty much the same way you will hold a spear. And not only does it imitate the holding of spear in a physical motion, it also has the same mentality. Okay? Xing Yi is a style that primarily focuses on offense, on attack. I mean, sure, it does have blocks, it does have parry and ways to not get attacked, but its main mindset of Xing Yi is to hit somebody, it's not to defend. And that's the first fundamental difference between Xing Yi and Yiquan, right? Yiquan, the reason they want a stance like this is because they start off with a defensive posture. They want to take up space, right? They want to shut off all the potential space that somebody might be able to attack you with, and then deal with it. So they start off a fight in a more or less a defensive position, not in the sense that they're passive, they're aggressive, but they want to take up as much space as possible to stop whatever the other guy is doing. While Xing Yi, they actually focus on attack. They hold the hand this way and they want to minimize their body surface instead of having a large body surface where you can get intercepted very easily. They want to have a narrow body surface, which is the most ideal for attacking. So we're going to take two sticks to imitate spears and look at why this is better for attacking. Okay, so we have very limited space, so we're just going to have to work with it. So ideally, when both people are holding a spear, we don't want to have a huge body surface, right? If you're facing something like this with a spear, you have more places that you're going to get poked holes into. So that's bad. Instead, we want to narrow the body surface and want to hide everything behind the spear. So if you look at from a front view, we don't want to stand like this, we want to stand on the side. That's a traditional spear position. In Xing Yi, they have a different stance, so the body is slightly diagonal rather than horizontal, but still, they want to hide everything behind the spear point as much as possible. And furthermore, when I'm trying to attack somebody who's also having a spear, I want to have as minimal motion as possible. I don't want to do something big and then try to swing it, right? That is bad. Instead, if he's holding a spear here, I want to hit there and then try to stab him. From the other side, hit there and then stab him. So both of them, if you look here, is there and then stab, or there and then stab. So you can see that that's why you want to minimize your body surface and focus on attacking, right? So that is why in Xing Yi, you want to have a stance that is narrow. And in case you're wondering how does this translate into, Xing Yi's combat application, for example, right, 专拳 is used to deflect an attack and set yourself up for another attack simultaneously. So for example, if somebody do a punch, instead of trying to block the punch, if I were to use 专点劈, I would go right into it, just like in the spear, right? In spear, if he has a spear here, I want to hit the spear and then poke him. with the first I want to zuan, and the zuan breaks his attack, but also keep myself forward, and then from there, that is the next attack. You can see that in this mindset, it's very similar to how a spear engages combat. Which is why Xing Yi want to stand like this, because they want to actually find the correct angle to maximize the potential to attack. They're not trying to get as much drag as possible over the place where there's a potential chance the opponent is going to be able to get hold of you and stop you, right? Xing Yi doesn't want to get stopped. So whether it's 钻拳, 劈拳, or 崩拳, it's all the same, right? I want to hit him. I don't want to get stopped. So this is the first fundamental difference between Xing Yi and Yiquan, despite Yiquan coming from Xing Yi originally. And the reason for that is because Yiquan took influence from Taiji. Okay, firstly, Yiquan talks about the 6 directional force, with forward, back, left, right, up and down. So they want almost like a spherical structure, and this pretty much goes in line with Taiji's peng, right? The inflation force. Think about a balloon, blow up a balloon, it folds up the space. So because of that, Yiquan also took Taiji's concept of push hand, and that's where Yiquan greatly differs from Xing Yi when it comes to combat. Taiji basically want to starve the opponent of potential space, and that's what Yiquan try to do as well. If you have ever seen push hand, it looks something like this, where 2 people engage and the hand goes in circles. So that you can see that if you want to engage this kind of training, let's turn it this way, you can see that you want to starve the opponent of their potential space. So you want to be inflated, round, and you want to squash into the opponent and takes up his space. And the more space you take up, the more uncomfortable it is for him to do anything back to you. And if you engage in this kind of engagement, then you can't have your elbow sticking in, because then it's very easy for the other person to control you, and you don't have a way to fight back. Which is why in Xing Yi, although they also do fight in close range, they don't want to establish contact first. They want to come off the bat and hit somebody. It's a primarily striking orientated style. Whereas Yiquan want to first get in contact with the guy, wrap him up, break his balance, and then punch him. That is why we want to take up space. So that when I'm standing like this, then I have very little surface you can attack. Anything that you throw at me in the vicinity, my arm is going to be able to stop it. And once I stop them, I'm going to set me up to break his balance. Okay, so instead of hypothetically speaking, in Xing Yi, where I stand like this, and I just want to find an opportunity to break it and hit him, in Yiquan, I want to come out to a guy and almost stop him off his space. And anything he does, if he throws a punch, I'm going to stop it, and I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to prevent him from doing anything. Anything he does, I'm going to try to wrap it up, and then break his balance, and then try to hit him as his balance is broken. So that's the big difference why Yiquan wants to have a structure that is round and taking up space. But anytime he touches any part of me, with his head, I'm going to break it that way. If he touches it first, I'm going to break it this way, I'm going to come up that way. It's pretty much you always want to break somebody's arms first, and in doing so break his balance. So for example, if I want to throw a punch at him, I'm not going to just come up and punch him. Instead, I'm going to establish contact and then break it there and then punch him. Right? Same goes if my hand's on the underside, his hand's on the top. Instead of just trying to punch him, I'm going to feel the contact, break it over there, and then hit him. So under that mindset, you want to be round. Okay? And that goes in line with the Taiji's combat principle, which is 接画拿发. Right? 接 is contact, 画 is to dissolve his force, 拿 is to seize his balance, not seizing his wrist or joint lock, seize his balance. In Yiquan's case, you break his balance, and then lastly, 发 is to issue force. So you can either send him flying or you can punch him. And that is why Yiquan want to have a round stance, which then in turn demands an elbow sticking out. Whereas it's not okay for Xing Yi because that's not the method of combat. Okay, Xing Yi doesn't do push hand like training, so it's not well equipped to engage a person in a circular manner. They want to get in, punch the person, and then get out and finish the fight. Okay, so that's the first difference and reason why Yiquan is okay to stick his elbow out, but it's not okay for Xing Yi. Now the second thing you need to consider is that even though Yiquan has the mentality and the habit of combat that takes up space in a circular kind of stance, not all Yiquan strikes are done with the elbow sticking out. And after all, as I've already been saying, we all live in the same world, obey the same laws of physics. Okay, so there are no exceptions to the way we punch. There's only going to be one way which the punch is most optimal. There may be different type of punches, but one particular punch, there will be one optimal way. So let's go through a few of the Yiquan strikes and examine this idea. So firstly, let's look at P. Right? In Xingyi, the P goes like this and like that. Yiquan's P is very different. They don't actually have this kind of P. Instead, the P looks something like this. If you go sideways, so it's unclear whether this P actually came from Xing Yi or maybe it came from Tong Bei. The debate about where this idea from where this Yiquan P actually came from. So I'm not going to comment on that. But you can already see the moment it is a P, which is a chopping motion, up and downwards motion, Yiquan, it takes away its original stance, right? Yiquan, you stand like this, elbow sticking out. Moment you're doing P, you see the elbow now goes in. It doesn't do P like this, despite its root stance being like that. And why is that? Well, quite simply because when you're doing a chopping motion, it's just more efficient if your elbow is turned in than sticking out. And next, let's look at Zuan, right? The drilling punch. In Xing Yi, it looks like this, right? It's like an uppercut, or some people do it in a circular motion, in and out. Now in Yiquan, Zuan Quan looks like this. It's basically just an uppercut. And if you look on the front, again, you start off on the elbow sticking out stance, but the moment the punch goes up, see the elbow comes in. They don't do an uppercut with elbow sticking out. So despite having a stance like this, the moment they're doing a Zuan Quan, you see, the elbow comes in. They don't stick the elbow out. And again, that's just simply because when doing an uppercut, elbow in simply gives you more force. And if you don't believe it, just ask somebody to hold out his hands, and then you just ask him to apply force, and you can feel, right? Come this way so you can see. I mean, if my elbow is sticking out, and I feel how well you can receive that force, and then do it with the elbows in, and then see how much better you fare against a force. And in case you still don't understand why we test it like this, okay, it's because this is testing the structural integrity of your body. If you can't receive a force through the rest of your body, then the power that you're generating forward will get stuck on the same point. If he's applying a force to me and it's breaking by the elbow, then my force from my body will break by the elbow too. Okay, well that is why you get into a particular punch or structure and you ask somebody else to apply force to examine if you are in a good structure. And from here you can see that when Yiquan does Zuan Quan, the elbow comes in too. Next is Beng Quan. Now in Yiquan there are no official Beng Quan. Many of the lineages, for example, the Yao Zongxin lineage, we don't have a Beng Quan, right? It's not standard issue punch in Yiquan. Next, we'll look at Pao Quan. Okay, in Xing Yi, Pao Quan looks something like this. This punch is very different in Yiquan, right? In Yiquan, the punch looks like this. And this is probably the one punch that most of the haters would take and then say that, you see, this is where Yiquan has the elbow sticking out while doing punches. Yes, this punch in particular in Yiquan does have his elbow sticking out. However, there's some very fundamental difference between this punch and Xing Yi's Pao Quan. Okay, firstly, the most important difference is the position of your fist. In Yiquan's version of Pao Quan, which we actually call 直拳 straight punch, but we also call it 不直的直拳, the non-linear straight punch. What that means is that it looks like a straight punch, but it doesn't travel in a straight path. Okay, when doing this punch in Yiquan, the punch is horizontal, whereas 炮拳 in Xing Yi is a vertical punch. That's the first difference. And if you wonder why this makes a big difference, quite simple. Go to a wall, in this case, Eric, and then let the person or wall put up a resistance, and you can feel it. If you put a vertical fist against a wall or a person that is resisting you, try to stick your elbow out and see how well you can balance or you can sustain resistance. You'll feel that the weakness comes to the wrist. Because the wrist, this is bad form. Okay, when you're pushing it against something like this, the wrist have a lot of stress and it's bad. However, the moment you turn that fist horizontal, suddenly you will feel that you have much better support. So if my fist is horizontal, having elbow sticking out actually give me good support. It actually give me more support than having elbow in. But if my fist is vertical, then sticking out the elbow is very bad form. Let's reverse it, right? You can try that and then tell me how you feel.
Okay.
See how that feels?
Yeah.
Okay, and then how this feels?
Yep.
And then turn your fist horizontal, and then see how that feels.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, explain to the viewers, what you experience as a difference.
Well, it's basically the supports that I get from on pushing out, basically, or punching. So it's I guess fundamentally when we're talking about the two cannon fist, right, or cannon punch.
Yeah, punch.
Yeah. From the two different style, right? At the end of the day, is that the direction is different. So your body mechanics is different as well. So the two, although they share the same name, right? But physically, they are two different punches to me.
Exactly, because one's vertical, one's horizontal, and that completely changes how you want to use the elbow to support the rest of the body's structure. And furthermore, right, 炮拳 is a linear punch in most styles. I mean, there are styles that I've met who does 炮拳 almost like a hook, right? But that's like a different story. But most of the styles does 炮拳 as a linear punch, okay? Whereas in Yiquan, this punch, we call it 直拳, right? But it's actually not a straight punch. If you look from the front, we are not punching straight. See my hand is actually punching that way, and this way. It's a cross punch. I'm not actually punching directly in front of me. It's like almost like in boxing where you punch the, two pads like this, you punch this side and that side. That's how Yiquan does this punch. So in that sense, when I'm actually doing this punch, despite my elbow sticking out, it's actually aligned to the direction I'm punching. I'm not punching there, I'm punching there. So in that case, it's still aligned. My elbow actually is always aligned to the direction of the punch, whether it's going up, whether it's going cross, or even when it's going down with 摘拳, which we'll get to in a moment. So you can see that the same body mechanic and physics principle remains in Yiquan. Even though the elbow is sticking out, that just simply means I'm punching in a different direction. Okay. Another thing to consider is the nature of the punch. Okay. In Xing Yi, the punch actually is drawn back and then sent out. So whether it is 崩拳, which come from here and you launch it out, or 炮拳 in and launch out, or 钻拳 in and launch out, or even P, they basically come from you basically retract your limb and then you throw it out. Now I do know that in Xing Yi we have 明暗化. When you get to 暗, which is the hidden force, and then 化, you don't have to pull out your hand and then punch again, right? You can basically place your hand here and then issue force. I do know about that. But difference between Xing Yi and Yiquan, in Yiquan, you never retract the fist and punch at all. The first time you ever learn this punch, you're already punching like this. So what difference does that make? Okay, quite simply, if you want to retract your fist and then throw it out, then you don't need to worry about the path of your elbow versus your fist. Okay, whether it's going this way, going that way, or going upwards like this, you need to align the elbow to the fist. But if I'm actually holding my hand here already, what I'm doing is I'm not launching the punch in the trajectory path. What I'm doing is I'm just rotating my body, expanding the frame, and then issuing the punch in a very minor motion, so that I don't have an issue with having a skewed trajectory. Okay, if I'm holding my hand here, I'm throwing it out. If my trajectory changes, if my elbow bends, and then the trajectory changes, then you lose force. In the future, and it's very hard to not change the trajectory when your elbow is not directly aligned behind your fist. But when I'm not throwing my fist at all, I'm just holding it here and punching like that, then there's no risk of messing up the trajectory because the fist isn't really traveling much, okay? Come forward. So instead of trying to launch a punch from here outwards, which you want to get the punch as straight through the whole path as possible to conserve the base energy to release on the opponent, each time I just have to put my hand here and just punch like this. And because of this kind of nature, I don't really worry about trajectory of the hand, so that, you know, even if my elbow is sticking out, I won't compromise the path my foot is traveling. I simply place my hand here and just punch like that. The next one is Heng Quan, right? Heng Quan, there is no equivalent in Yiquan, whether it's Yao lineage or any other lineage. I've never seen a Yiquan's equivalent of Heng Quan. There are people like, for example, the Han brothers in Hong Kong and now in America, they train both Xing Yi and Yiquan, so they probably do have Heng Quan. But in pure Yiquan lineage, there is no Heng Quan. Instead, we have two other punches. We have a hook, and then we have a Zai Quan, which is a downwards kind of punch, okay? And again, in these two, basically a hook looks like this. And again, the elbow does sticking out. Why? Because this is almost similar to a boxing hook, except you don't wind it up and swing it, you keep it here and you just punch in like that. And again, when you see the punch, the elbow is in line with the direction the fist is going. So it's not about whether your elbow should stick out or not, it's about whether your elbow is aligned in the same direction your punch is traveling. That's actually the most important thing. The moment your elbow is disaligned to the, so if I'm punching this way but I'm changing my elbows, that's where the problem comes in. So it's not about your elbow cannot stick out at all, but it's about the direction you are punching. And frankly, in Xingyi, as you can see, all 5 elements of fist is in a linear fashion, right? Even Heng Quan, it is kind of horizontal, but still it comes out in a linear fashion, which is why you can't stick your elbow out. Whereas in Yiquan, because they have punches that come in other directions, that's why it's okay to stick your elbow out for those specific punches. Same with Zai Quan, which looks like this. Right? If you look at a person, when I'm doing a Zai Quan, basically I'm doing this way, and again, see the punch is going diagonally downwards, which is why the elbow is raised to a position that it travels in a direct line through the person this way. Okay? In this case, no matter how high I raise the elbow, it is in the same line that my fist and power intended to travel. That is the most important thing here. The elbow positioning is based on the direction of your punch. Next, we'll just quickly look at Hu Pu, because this was brought up by some of that person's fanboys. Okay, yes, there are certain Hu Pu where you does it with elbow sticking out. For example, the Wang Peisheng lineage that I personally have contact with, they do Hu Pu with the elbow sticking out. But my friend Byron also said that in their lineage, Hu Pu is done with the elbow sticking in, but Hu Cheng is a variation of Hu Pu where you do with the elbow sticking out. So yes, there are versions where the elbow sticking out. But again, just because one animal form, particular even, in fact in this case, is a variation of the original, that elbow sticking out, it doesn't validate you to have elbow sticking out in everything else you do. That is very poor logic. Now in Yiquan, Hu Pu looks like this. Okay? Again, the elbow does stick out. Now, why it's okay for Yiquan to stick out its elbow in this case? Again, there is no path of traveling. Okay, I'm not doing a strike coming in and then going out. That's what Xingyi does, right? Xingyi does this and then strikes out. So in this case, your elbow needs to be in so that you can have as a linear motion as possible to conserve the energy projected onto the opponent. Okay, if you're doing a move like this and then you stick your elbow out, you immediately feel that your hands start to wobble and it's not as focused on the direction you're trying to generate that power. But in Yiquan, my hand doesn't count back. So I literally put my hand here and the force is issued like this. In which case, this whole frame of the arms is more like a ball. I'm not trying to puncture him like a spear or something that is sharp going in. Rather, my whole frame expands, the back, the shoulder, the elbow, and it inflates like a ball. That's what generates power. So both works, but for different purpose, right? In Xing Yi, Hu Pu is designed to hurt somebody. Obviously, I'm not gonna generate too much power, but just let you feel, right? If my elbow are in, I have more wires down, and I'm doing this. You see how that is focused on going in. Whereas if my elbow is sticking out like Yiquan, see how that's more like a displacement. I mean, what difference does it feel?
Yeah, it's one more feels like a strike.
A strike, yes.
Yeah, the first one, basically.
Yes.
The other one is, it's like you say, a displacement.
A displacement.
Bit of a push there.
Yeah, so that's why the elbows are different. Yiquan doesn't want to strike somebody with Hu Pu, right? They strike you with punches. Hu Pu is what you do to friendly sparring partners to show that you have the upper hand. So you want the person to go back, but not get hurt. That's why they want to do with the elbow out. Now, same with Xing Yi, right? When you do a Hu Cheng, this is for displacement. But if you want to hurt somebody, then you would want to be here and do a generate power like that. So those are the two differences why Yiquan you want to have Hu Pu with elbow sticking out, but Xing Yi, the original Hu Pu elbow is sticking in. So basically, when elbow sticking in, you have more concentrated force going forward. Elbow sticking out, you have more of a inflative bounciness that displaces the person rather than focusing on hurting the person. Right, anything else you want to add to this whole debacle?
To me, right, it's when you talk about like all these physical form, right? When I say physical form, I mean like how the thing physically look, elbow in and out and etc. Right? That actually, to me, the key differences is how the mechanic or the power generation actually comes in. For ethers, right? For example, the tiger pouncing.
Yeah,
right?
tiger pouncing.
So for example, the ethers tiger pouncing, for me, is a balloon. So that's why they have their elbows out. It's because the way they generate the power is through an inflation force. Whereas the Xing Yi, right? That one, I'm not quite sure how the power generation is, but I would imagine it's not an inflation.
No, it's not inflation. It's like a spear.
Yeah.
Like one of my other Xing Yi friends used to say, Xing Yi power is spear power. How you pierce somebody with a spear is how you want to punch somebody with Xing Yi.
So to me, right, something as fundamental as power generation, they differ so much already. Although they share the same name and it's open palm strike or whatever you call it, right? But fundamentally, the way you generate power is different. So that's why you see the physical form of it is different as well. So I don't think it's a fair comparison when you say, oh yeah, tiger pouncing, one has an elbow sticking out and the other one has an elbow sticking in. They didn't mention the fact or take into account that the power generation of the two moves are completely different. So I don't think it's a valid argument or valid comparison. Let's just put it this way: between the two tiger pouncing, it's two different moves fundamentally.
Yes, exactly. So when we're talking about Xing Yi, talk about Xing Yi. Okay, don't try to set up a straw man to bring the focus onto something else. That is very bad way to argue. And furthermore, when we talk about Xing Yi 5 elemental first, talk about 5 elemental first, right? There's no point in saying, oh, but what about 12 animal? Like Tuoxing has the elbow sticking out. Yeah, but that's a completely different move. Okay, that's why the elbow sticking out. But talk about the 5 elemental first, if anyone wants to still argue that point, you got to give me evidence and convincing evidence of why it's okay to have elbow sticking out, what advantage you have for doing 5 elemental hand with elbow sticking out. Okay, if you have proof of physics, or body mechanics that says in this linear punch, if elbow sticking out is better, well, then I'm willing to listen to the reason. Okay, but just quoting some other style is stupid. All right. So that's it for today. Hope this video has made sense to you. Hope that you further understand why Xing Yi want elbow in and why Yiquan is okay to have the elbow sticking out. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, click on the bell icon so you get updated with new content as soon as I upload them. If you can support me on Patreon, that would be greatly appreciated. As always, a shout out to all my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much for supporting me, especially through the pandemic. Message me whenever you have any questions about current content or suggestions for future content. Lastly, we're still in the pandemic, so keep your social distance, wear your mask, sanitize your hands, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching TriEssence Martial Art channel.